local elections, they can really throw up some surprises.
Oh, absolutely.
Take what just happened in Mahakam Ulu Regency. There was the vote back in November 2024. But then, well, things got complicated.
Very complicated. And that's what we're digging into today, right? You brought us the court documents.
Exactly. We've got the Constitutional Court's decision here, ruling number 224 PHPU, BUP XSH Thou 2025, concerning that Mahakam Ulu Regent election.
It's a really interesting one. It touches on some fundamental questions about election integrity.
Right. So for you listening, our mission here is to really unpack this. Why were the results tossed out? Why was a candidate pair actually disqualified?
And why order a whole new election, a revote?
Yeah, exactly. And it seems this idea of a political contract is central to everything.
It really is the core of the issue.
Okay, so let's start with the ruling itself. What did the Constitutional Court, the MK, actually order?
Okay, so the MK handed down this ruling on Monday, February 24th, 2025. Pretty significant stuff.
And the main thing?
The main order was for revote. A pemungutan suara ulang, or PSU, they call it, for the regent and vice-regent election.
But not just a revote. There was more.
Right. This is the big twist. They also disqualified one of the candidate pairs. Candidate pair number 3.
That was Owina Mayang Sherry and Stanislas Laya, disqualified. So who is running in this revote then?
Good question. The original pairs number 1 and number 2 are back in.
So that's Drs. Yohane Savun and Drs. Waiwan Janelle.
Yes, and Novita Bulan and Ertia Fathermarthan. They're both eligible for the PSU.
Okay, but what about pair number 3 spot?
Well, the MK actually said the political parties or the coalition that backed pair number 3 originally, they can nominate a new pair.
Interesting. So potentially 3 pairs again, just one of them different?
Potentially, yes, if they nominate someone and they get verified.
Okay, let's get back to these these political contracts. This seems to be why all this happened. What did the court find?
This was the crux of it. The MK found what they called a structured, systematic, and massive, or TSM violation.
TSM. You hear that term sometimes.
Yes, and here it was directly tied to these contract politics. The court said these weren't just, typical campaign promises.
How so? What made them different?
They were actual documented agreements. Signed documents, in fact.
Signed by who?
Between candidate pair number 3 and numerous RT leaders. Those are the heads of the local neighborhood units.
Wow. How many are we talking about?
The evidence showed 28 RT leaders involved, from 18 different villages spread across all 5 sub-districts in Mahakam Ulu. It was widespread.
And did the candidates deny this?
Actually, no. Candidate pair number 3 acknowledged these contracts existed. That was quite significant.
So the court had to distinguish these from, say, a candidate just outlining their vision or policy plan.
Exactly. The MK was clear. Normal political promises, things in your vision or mission statement, those are fine. That's part of campaigning.
But these contracts were different.
Very different. The court saw them as a systematic way to basically recruit a campaign team using these community leaders.
Using the RT heads.
Yes. The MK's reasoning, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, was that it directs citizens to take sides using the community management structure. That structure being the RT heads.
So it wasn't just about getting votes. It was about mobilizing the community structure itself.
That seems to be the court's interpretation. They saw it as fundamentally undermining the fairness of the whole process.
Okay, so it's a TSM violation. But how did they legally frame it? Was it considered like illegal campaigning or something else?
They framed it primarily as bribery or, vote buying.
Vote buying, that's serious. What was being promised in these contracts?
This is where the details get quite stark. The contracts promised substantial amounts of money, specifically from public funds if they won.
Like what kind of amounts?
Okay, so for the village fund allocation, the Alakasi Dana Kempempang promises ranged from 4 billion to 8 billion rupiah.
Per village?
Per village, per year.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
It is. And then there was also a family resilience program mentioned.
What did that promise?
That promised between 5 million and 10 million rupiah per 10 households per Dasawisma, also per year.
So very specific. Very large financial promises tied directly to getting elected.
Precisely. The MK reasoned that making these kinds of huge financial promises in private agreements contingent on winning, well, that crosses the line into vote buying.
And the RT leaders were key to this.
Yes, they were the conduits. They were essentially incentivized to deliver votes in their areas, and the contracts implied they'd coordinate with village heads later to make sure these funds flowed if Pair 3 won.
It really does sound like they were being turned into campaign workers.
That was another key finding by the court. They pointed to a specific clause in the contracts.
What did it say?
It apparently allowed the RT leaders to socialize the political contract in their communities.
Socialize it, meaning promote it.
Promote it, explain it, get people on board. The court interpreted this as creating a binding task for the RT leaders to actively influence voters for pair number 3.
So even if maybe the candidates didn't explicitly say, you are now our campaign team,
the effect, according to the MK, was that they became the campaign team. Whether intentionally or not, the contracts functionally turned them into operatives.
Okay, so we have the TSM violation, the vote buying angle, the illegal campaign structure. It all points to why pair number 3 was disqualified.
Correct. The disqualification stemmed directly from these findings about the contract politic.
But why the full revote, the PSU? Why not just say disqualify them and declare the second place finisher the winner, or do a recount?
That's a really important question the MK addressed. They looked at the original vote distribution, and it seems support was fairly spread out among all 3 initial candidates. There wasn't one clear runner-up who would obviously represent the majority if pair 3 was removed.
Okay. So just promoting the second place pair wouldn't necessarily reflect what voters wanted overall.
Exactly. Plus, the court was worried about the impact of the vote buying. They felt it had likely tainted the entire result across the board.
So a fresh start was needed to nullify that influence.
Yes. They were concerned the effects of the bribery would linger even if they just declared someone else the winner. The influence had to be washed clean, so to speak, with a new vote.
Did they mention any other concerns?
They did raise a point about the incumbent regent, Bonifacius Belawange,
Who is?
the father of Owina Mayang Shari, the disqualified candidate from pair number 3. The court noted his continued presence in office could be a complicating factor, potentially adding undue influence if there wasn't a full revote.
Right, that adds another layer.
Yeah.
Okay, so the revote it is. What are the logistics? When does this PSU happen?
The MK set a deadline within 90 days of their ruling, which was February 24th, 2025. So relatively soon.
And who gets to vote? Same people as last time.
Yes, that's key. They specified using the same voter lists, the DPT, DPTB, DTK from the original November 27th, 2024 election.
Okay. And we know original pairs 1 and 2 are in. What about this potential new third pair?
So the parties or coalition that backed pair 3 get a chance to nominate new candidates.
And then what?
Those new candidates have to go through verification by the KPU, the Election Commission, to make sure they're eligible.
Assuming they are verified, do they get to campaign?
Yes. The MK ruling requires that all candidates, the old ones and any new ones, must have the opportunity to introduce themselves and their platforms. So some form of campaigning or voter introduction will happen before the PSU.
Makes sense. And once the revote happens, how are the results finalized? Does it go back to the MK?
No, the MK stated the Mahakam Ulu KPU, the local commission, will certify and announce the results according to the usual election laws.
But under supervision?
Yes, under the supervision of the provincial KPU and the national KPU. So there's oversight, but the final certification is local, based on the PSU results.
Okay, so summing this up, a pretty dramatic situation in Mahakam Ulu. An election effectively overturned because of these illegal contract politics.
Definitely. The court saw them as vote buying, plain and simple, and acted decisively. Disqualification and a full revote.
It really hammers home the importance of, well, election integrity, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The court emphasized protecting the voters' constitutional rights to a fair process, making sure the playing field was level, or at least trying to reset it.
It definitely leaves you with something to think about. For you listening, consider the broader picture here. Where is that line between a legitimate campaign promise and an illegal inducement like this?
Yeah, how do we balance wanting candidates to offer concrete plans with preventing outright vote buying, especially when it involves community structures?
It shows both the potential vulnerabilities in democratic processes, but also, perhaps, the strength of the safeguards when they're properly enforced. Definitely something to mull over.